The man hesitated for a moment. Let's go with the first one, face reading. The friend who referred me said, your master's face readings are very accurate. That friend survived his ordeal thanks to your master's guidance, navigated through his crisis. I analyzed his face last time. He's a man who would leave not a bone unbroken after consuming you. So it's not surprising he's implicated, involved in a murder case. When one does too much evil, retribution naturally follows by the laws of cause and effect. But now, the red pimple in the middle of his forehead is nearly gone, indicating this matter will pass without much harm. He doesn't need to resort to any further schemes, but his downfall is his own cleverness. Looking at his financial aspect, he clearly lost a significant sum recently. Seems he tried to avoid implication by bribing some connections. This financial loss is just the beginning of his retribution. A few minutes later, I began speaking, Mr. Jang. From your face, I see. You should stay home for 3 days. Do nothing and the issue will resolve itself. Zhang Hao was taken aback, reminding him, and avoid any shady dealings. Otherwise, you might make matters worse. You mean I don't have to do anything? Zhang Hao looked surprised. I nodded again. Your face shows that frost has arrived, but spring is not far away, meaning you need do nothing. No need to worry about other issues. This murder case doesn't concern you directly, but you've been rushing around trying to fix things, naturally drawing some attention. Zhang Hao was silent for a moment, then seemed to understand, a smile quickly spreading across his face. Master Li, may I ask your name? Li Tyan, that's all, I replied with a smile. Zhang Hao seemed in high spirits, calling me Master Li repeatedly. You're too polite, just call me Li Tyan. Oh, all right, next time I have an issue, I'll come to you. I waved my hand, that's fine. Zhang Hao laughed, then pulled out a red envelope from his bag. Placing it on the table, I glanced at it. It must have been at least 2,000. My master would only charge 300 for such a reading. How could I accept this much? Mr. Zhang, this is too much. I can't accept it. Not at all, not at all. Zhang Hao shook his head with a smile. I'll have plenty more to consult you on. I hope you'll guide me further. I understood his implication. Zhang Hao shook his head with a laugh. I've got plenty more matters to deal with in the future. I hope you'll guide me further then. I understood the subtext of his words. He knew he'd done many wrongs, and was likely looking to buy peace of mind with money. I hesitated for a moment. Then, after saying thank you, I pocketed the money. My master was still in critical condition. Money was too vital for me right now. After Zhang Hao said his goodbyes, he turned to leave, but I hesitated, calling out to him. Zhang Hao turned back puzzled. Young Master Li, is there something else? I pondered for a moment, Mr. Zhang. There might be changes in your marriage soon. What do you mean, young Master Li? Zhang Hao was taken aback, looking at me. I didn't speak. Instead, I pointed to the top of his head. A look of surprise crossed Zhang Hao's face first. Thank you for your guidance, young Master Li. After saying this, he left hurriedly. I breathed a sigh of relief. Some things were hard to say outright. Zhang Hao was somewhat weak in that department, hence the green aura atop his head. After Zhang Hao left, I counted the money, a full 3,000. After lunch, I sat back in the shop. In the afternoon, a stylish, beautiful woman walked in. It was rare to see someone dressed like her in our village. Curious, I stood up. What can I help you with, miss? Then sat down and said, my husband hit me. I want to divorce him, but he won't agree. I want you to tell me when my husband will die. I was taken aback. What kind of reading is this? Predicting someone's death? But business was business, and I had no reason to refuse. I cleared my throat, tentatively asking, did you bring a photo of your husband or his birth details? The woman shook her head. Can't you read it from his face or palm? Just do it like that. I nodded. Then give me your hand to look at. Because from her palm, I could see he was very unfaithful, cheating with several men at least. But how many times? I couldn't tell. She herself had cheated, yet hoped her husband would die. Quite selfish and cruel. As for his marriage line, it was indeed broken, indicating only one marriage, and her husband would indeed die. I paused. Your husband will die, but no specific time is shown. That he will die is enough. The woman nodded, her voice devoid of any sorrow. I sighed inwardly. What misfortune for a man to meet such a woman. Will I marry again? She asked. No, you'll only have one marriage in this lifetime. She was silent for a moment, then looked at me intently. Your readings are quite accurate indeed. What do you mean by that, miss? I asked instinctively. I remember this is the first time I've seen you. Haven't you forgotten? This morning, you read for my husband. Even specifically warned him about my infidelity. You forgot so quickly? She looked at me, letting out a cold laugh. I was startled to hear this. Her husband was Jang Hao from this morning. Was she here to cause trouble? The woman stared at me for a while, as if noticing my unusual calm. Her eyes flickered, and she gave a strange snort. Don't worry, I'm not here to cause trouble. Thanks to you telling my husband. I don't have to be so sneaky anymore. Now I can date men openly. I was speechless at this. Jang Hao was indeed unfortunate to have such a wife. After saying this, she pulled out a wad of red notes, then gave a coquettish laugh and swayed out on her long legs. I carefully slipped the money into my pocket. I still have one more question for you. I knew what she was referring to, and now I can date men openly. I was left speechless by this. To have such a wife, Jang Hao was indeed unfortunate. After saying this, she pulled out a wad of red notes and threw them at me, then gave a girlish laugh, swaying out on her long legs. I carefully tucked the money into my pocket. The woman came back. I still have one more question for you. Do you understand about that? I had a pretty good idea of what she meant. Has she encountered something unsavory? I know a bit, I said after some thought, nodding. The woman sighed in relief. My friend has been acting strange lately. We used to go out drinking in the evenings, but recently she hasn't been answering my calls. The day before yesterday, I went to her house, opened the door to find her talking to herself. She only glanced at me when I called her, and her gaze was terrifying. Do you think my friend has encountered something unclean? I thought for a moment, shaking my head. She probably has encountered something unclean, but this is beyond my abilities to solve. Aren't you a fortune teller? How can you not know about these things? The woman looked at me skeptically. Miss, the arts of Kim and Dunjia are divided into 9 schools. To master even one is no small feat. To know them all, that's harder than climbing to heaven. I said with resignation. But could my friend die from this? The woman looked at me, concerned. I sighed, feeling helpless, and handed her a bundle of incense used for offerings. Go to your friend's house now. Light 3 sticks of incense at her door. After they burn down, take a photo and show it to me. Aren't you coming with me, master? My friend is quite wealthy. If you help her with this, she'll give you at least 20,000 as a thank you. 20,000 is tempting, but I need to consider my own life. I shook my head awkwardly. I must think of my own safety. Seeing I wouldn't be moved, the woman could only leave in resignation. By evening, no more customers came, and I closed the shop content. I slept well that night. The next morning, I went to the hospital to pay the bills. My master was still unconscious. Looking so pale, it ached my heart. I felt guilty too. After leaving the hospital, I headed back to the shop, but before I even reached the door, I spotted a luxury car parked outside. It was the woman from yesterday, who rushed out of the car with urgency, showing me pictures from her phone. The pictures were of the 3 incense sticks I told her to light, but they burned with 2 short and 1 long. This meant the entity haunting her friend wasn't too malevolent. Since it wasn't a malevolent spirit, it might have some unfulfilled wish. If the spirit fulfilled its wish, it would leave. For the sake of that 20,000, I opened the shop, grabbed some yellow paper, a brush, and some red string, then got into the woman's car. As we passed the market, I bought a live rooster and a piece of beef, then headed to her friend's house. On the way, the woman told me her name was Zhang Wenjing, and her friend was named Yi Zi. They were quite close friends, which was why she was waiting for me so early. Zhang Wenjing drove us to a villa complex in the city. I carried the rooster as we went upstairs with Zhang Wenjing. She had the key to her friend's house, and as soon as she opened the door, and the rooster in my arms squawked immediately. Indeed, there was something unclean here. Zhang Wenjing led me to a bedroom. Indeed, there's something unclean here. Once inside, Zhang Wenjing led me to a bedroom door, indicating the trouble was within. I turned the handle, peering in, and there was a woman moving like a puppet, circling around the bed, her hair in wild disarray, mumbling to herself. She looked no different from a mad woman. Upon my entrance, she merely glanced my way, then continued her path around the bed as if nothing had changed. This gave me some relief. If she had stared at me like an enemy, I would have fled. I didn't speak to her. Instead, I quietly closed the door. Zhang Wenjing looked at me. How is it? Is she going to be all right? She'll be fine, I said, meaning I had some confidence in resolving this. I pulled out the yellow paper and brush, scribbled my birth details on the paper, and stuffed it into the rooster's beak. Then I tied a red string around the rooster's neck, with the other end around my wrist. I gently opened Yizi's door again, releasing the rooster inside. After the rooster entered, Yizi ignored me, continuing her odd pacing walk. I covered my mouth, and from outside the door, I declared in a stern voice, "Daring rogue spirit, why don't you surrender yourself? Come with me to the underworld to confess your sins." Upon hearing this, Yizi suddenly focused on the rooster, her face filled with panic, and she scurried to a corner, shouting, "Master Ox Head, please don't capture me. I'll leave her body right now." No sooner had she spoken, her body slumped to the ground, and a wisp of smoke arose from afar, gradually forming into a ghostly figure. I tugged on the red string, and the rooster inside clucked loudly. The ghost, terrified, wailed for mercy. Raising my voice to ask, being a mere spirit, why harm the living? Master Ox Head, I did no harm to her. I asked her to take me home. She agreed, so I followed her. The ghost quickly explained. Then why haven't you reported to the underworld? I continued in a grave tone. I don't know. I died not long ago, but I can't leave the vicinity where I died. If Master Ox Head could find my body, I would go to the underworld with you. I pondered this. My master had once told me, after death, if the body suffers abnormal treatment, it might prevent the soul from entering the underworld. I felt a chill of understanding. Come closer, I said. Let this ghost marshal see clearly. I wanted him closer to read his face. Since a ghost's face is like a human's, I could discern where he might have died or how. This too is a form of divination. The ghost stood, and I realized it was an 18 or 19-year-old girl, with a youthful innocence still in her eyes. I wanted to see the ghost's face, for a ghost's face is much like a human's. From her visage, I could discern where she might have died, or how she met her end. It's another form of face reading. The ghost stood up, inching closer, and then I saw. She was, in fact, an 18 or 19-year-old girl, with a hint of innocence still in her eyes, clearly a student at first glance, and around her neck, there was a deep, deep mark of strangulation, obviously killed by a rope. This was murder. The killer must have hidden her body elsewhere, preventing her from moving on to the afterlife. Her face didn't show the signs of one destined for early death. In simple terms, there are only two possibilities. First, she was a scapegoat, unwittingly taking a death intended for another. Or second, she might not be dead, perhaps having experienced something so terrifying that her soul was frightened out of her body. After a long silence, I asked gravely, "Do you remember where you died?" The ghost pondered. "I only remember it was my friend's birthday that day. We had some drinks at a bar. Then my classmate and I took a taxi back. But when we were hailing the cab, my friend suddenly remembered and said he'd go back for it, leaving me to wait by the roadside." Someone suddenly covered my mouth. After that, I remember nothing. Hearing this, I sighed inwardly. She was likely taking a death blow meant for her friend. "Do you remember the name of the bar?" I pressed. The ghost thought it was called Nightshade Bar. Zhang Wenjing whispered to me that bar is nearby. I nodded, then addressed the ghost inside. "Trust me once. Enter the rooster's beak, and I'll help you find your body." The ghost, hearing this, immediately turned into a wisp of smoke and entered the rooster. I rushed forward, bit my finger and dabbed at the rooster's beak. All went smoothly, but it was somewhat unexpected, perhaps because she hadn't been dead long. No, I'd been deceived. Her face was calm earlier, meaning she was initially frightened, but upon getting closer, she realized I wasn't a true ghost marshal and saw I wanted to help her, so she went along with it. Thinking I had a natural talent for ghost catching, I picked up the rooster, and a girl's voice echoed in my ear. I stiffened, nearly throwing the rooster away. She had seen through me. I gave a wry smile, pretending not to hear. Zhang Wenjing quickly helped her friend up. Give her some ginger tea, I advised. She should be fine in a few days. Zhang Wenjing nodded, then pulled out a bulging red envelope from her bag. I glanced at it. Clearly, it contained more than just a few thousand. I accepted it without hesitation. She said if her friend recovers, she'd come to my shop to thank me. I nodded in thanks, and then left the room. The ghost was still inside the rooster in my arms. I needed to find her body quickly, to let her move on. I hailed a cab towards Nightshade Bar. When we arrived, the bar wasn't open yet. I hesitated for a moment, asking the rooster, "Where did you wait for the cab?" The ghost's voice echoed in my ear. It was at the alley behind. I headed towards the alley she mentioned. Reaching the spot, I stood there bewildered. I'm a fortune teller, not a corpse finder. But logically, if a friend disappears, one would report it immediately. So why no signs of police investigation here? I murmured to myself, then suddenly noticed two marks on the ground nearby. They looked like drag marks from high heels. I quickly asked the ghost, "Did you wear high heels that day?" "Yes," she answered promptly. My heart leaped with hope. Arriving at the spot, I circled around but found nothing else of note. I felt a bit downhearted. I pulled it out, my heart jumping with joy. It was my best friend, Tyan Shan. I answered, hearing his voice. She quickly answered, "Yes." My heart leaped with joy, and I hurried towards the trail. Upon reaching the spot, I wandered around for quite some time, finding nothing else useful. I felt a pang of disappointment, but as I stood there, undecided, my phone in my pocket suddenly rang. I pulled it out, my heart thrumming with excitement. It was my best mate, Tyan Shan, calling. I answered, and heard Tyan Shan's voice, "Xiaoshan, I'm back. I'm right at your master's shop door. You're slacking off again, aren't you? Where are you? I'll come pick you up. We'll go for drinks tonight." I smiled lightly, telling him where I was. "I'm at Nightshade Bar, it's not far. Wait for me at the bar for 20 minutes. I'll be right there." After saying this, he hung up the phone. I was momentarily speechless, but with Tyan Shan here, maybe he could help find the ghost's body. I smiled and walked back to Nightshade Bar's entrance. After about half an hour, "Hey, handsome, waiting for someone? How about hanging out with me?" His somewhat handsome face grinned at me. Taking a closer look, I exclaimed in shock, "Tyan Shan, how have you fallen so low? What's with the hair?" Tyan Shan laughed and scolded, "This is fashion. You wouldn't understand. Forget that. You've been gone for 3 years. And now you're back suddenly." I was just saying that when Tyan Shan suddenly glanced at the rooster in my arms. The rooster immediately started trembling, as if it had met its natural predator. Tyan Shan looked at me with curiosity. "What are you doing with a rooster here?" I gave Tyan Shan a mysterious look. "Don't be scared, but there's a female ghost in this rooster. She's not harmful though. She wants me to help find her body, so she can move on to the underworld." Tyan Shan gave me a speechless look, then reached out to stroke the rooster's neck. "We can do it together tonight. I'll have it found in an hour." Tyan Shan looked at me confidently. I thought he was joking, so I didn't pay much attention. We then found a small diner and started chatting while eating. But as we talked, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Now, looking at Tyan Shan's face, I noticed a dark aura surrounding his malevolent feature. Not a sign of misfortune, but indicating that someone important to him had died recently. Tyan Shan said suddenly, his face calm, "What's going on?" Tyan Shan shook his head. I'm not ready to talk about it now. His voice turned cold suddenly. What had he encountered in those 3 years away? But what puzzled me was, apart from this, I couldn't read anything else from his face. Tyan Shan led me straight to the alley behind the bar. He pulled out a yellow talisman from his bag, mumbling something under his breath, and in the next second, the talisman burst into flames. Quickly moving closer, curious, wondering if he had a lighter hidden. I'm performing a ritual, Tyan Shan said, his face turning serious. This boy, after 3 years, hadn't he been learning Daoist arts with a master? No wonder I couldn't read his face. People with some cultivation, unless they allow it, I can't read their fate. It's indeed hard to see through him. The burning talisman then floated up, like a guiding light, moving deeper into the alley. We exchanged a look, and quickly followed. This ghost died unjustly. I can find her body, no matter where it is. This ghost died unjustly, thus carrying an aura of resentment. As long as there's this kind of aura, no matter where her body lies, I can find it, Tyan Shan explained to me. I looked at him with admiration. You've become so skilled. Teach me some of that. Tyan Shan gave me a sympathetic look. Sorry, these Daoist arts are tailored for the handsome. You're better off sticking to fortune-telling. I believe in you, brother. I almost kicked him for that. This guy knows how to play both sides. Tyan Shan chuckled. Continuing, putting the ghost inside the rooster was a good move. But she's a new ghost, still very weak. She might not be able to get out once inside. Is it that serious? If she can't get out, what use is finding her body? Tyan Shan's expression then turned serious. I'm an authority on ghosts and spirits. Don't trust what ghosts say. I was taken aback. Why say that? Because ghosts lie, Tyan Shan said coldly. The rooster in my arms began trembling in fear. How had Tyan Shan gained such power? The Tyan Shan who returned was not the same one who left. It's hard to imagine what he went through in those 3 years. Indeed, Tyan Shan had changed much since we last met. It was difficult to fathom what he'd been through. When Tyan Shan mentioned not to trust ghosts, I instinctively looked down at the trembling rooster. Can't you really trust what ghosts say? As I pondered this, Tyan Shan turned to look at me, his gaze serious. Zhao Ocean, remember what I just said. You're too soft-hearted, too full of compassion. If you don't change, you'll suffer greatly. I nodded with a smile. I wasn't used to seeing Tyan Shan so serious. We continued following the burning talisman, which led us to an abandoned park. By then, the talisman had almost burnt out. Tyan Shan stopped, looking around, his face grim. We've found the spot, but there's a problem. Hearing this, I wasn't too surprised. After all, the ghost couldn't enter the underworld because of her body. Tyan Shan continued. Didn't you feel the chill? I looked around instinctively. This park had been abandoned for ages, thus looking quite desolate. I didn't feel anything eerie, I replied. Tyan Shan looked at me, speechless. Do you know why this place is abandoned? 5 years ago, when we were still in school, someone died here suddenly. You haven't forgotten that, have you? Of course not. The school even gave us a day off, telling us not to leave home. But we sneaked out to the town on our bikes, playing arcade games all afternoon. I said with a laugh. But as I spoke, I suddenly felt something was off. Why are you bringing this up, Tyan Shan? Tyan Shan gave a cold laugh. It's simple, he said loudly. Because that dead person turned into a ghost, and it's lurking nearby. I was startled. What do you mean? There's another ghost here? Is that why no one comes to this park anymore? Before Tyan Shan could respond, the rooster in my arms began to tremble violently. I asked quickly. You could say that. Tyan Shan nodded. But this female ghost has deep strangulation marks on her neck. How could a ghost strangle someone with a rope? I looked at Tyan Shan, puzzled. Do ghosts even use ropes to kill? Tyan Shan gave me a disdainful look. Stop arguing, lad. Then he pulled out a small bottle from his bag, which he applied to his eyelids. I knew it was ox-tears, used specifically for seeing ghosts. Tyan Shan then began to scan the area, his gaze eventually fixing on an old banyan tree. Could the ghost have killed her with these vines? The thought made me shiver. Striding towards the tree, I didn't dare lag behind. But it was strange. The closer we got to the banyan, the colder my back felt, as if someone were blowing cold air on me. The ground was covered with a thick layer of yellow leaves. But Tyan Shan gave me an odd look. What are you looking at me like that for? I had barely asked when I heard the ghost's voice near my ear. Master, you've stepped on me. Could there be a body buried here? The thought made me jump back. Tyan Shan chuckled, squatting down, and began to clear away the decayed leaves. A foul smell quickly spread, and soon he pulled out a human hand. I was thrilled, squatting down to help. In no time, we uncovered a whole body, and around its neck, a vine was tightly wound, as if to keep it from leaving. At that moment, I heard the ghost's sobbing voice. I'm only 19, and I've died like this. Hearing this, I could only sigh inwardly. Tyan Shan, frowning, said, That ghost's been dead for years. Now with some power, able to harm people. Women are good nourishment for ghosts, but there's something odd about this one. If I'm not mistaken, she was born in a year, month, and hour of yin, which is why that ghost attacked her, absorbing her yang energy to greatly increase its power. Tyan Shan stood up with a serious look, pulling out another talisman. Take her body away, he said gravely. Feeling the air around us grow colder, I hurriedly worked to untangle the vine from her neck, then asked Tyan Shan. Tyan Shan nodded gravely, pointing in a direction. I need you to move back. I nodded quickly at his words. Because the air around us had suddenly turned cold, I hurriedly worked to free the vine wrapped around the corpse's neck, then asked Tyan Shan, Is there anything else I can do to help? Tyan Shan nodded solemnly, pointing in a direction. I need you to step back. Move away, he insisted. I grumbled a bit in my mind. Am I really that useless? At least I have some boy's urine, don't I? With a resigned sigh, I hoisted the body onto my back and ran back as fast as I could. I hadn't gone 100 meters when I heard the eerie wail of ghost cries, and then Tyan Shan shouted aloud, chanting those obscure spells again, followed by the sounds of combat. I glanced back at the rooster, saying, Death is irreversible. You died so unjustly in this life. I hope you find a better family in your next life. No sooner had I spoken, a gentle voice whispered in my ear, Thank you for comforting me. A puff of white smoke emerging from its beak, which transformed into the female ghost, while the rooster gave one last crow and collapsed dead. I sighed, setting the body down. Looking at the corpse on the ground, I felt no fear, knowing she was just an unjustly killed girl. I stood there silently, grieving for one so young to have died, now only able to watch her own body. I waited there for about half an hour, when a figure approached from the distance. Recognizing who it was, I hurried over. How did it go with the ghost, Tyan Shan? Tyan Shan, looking pale, said, It's dealt with. He glanced at the body on the ground, then at the ghost beside it. The ghost immediately bowed respectfully. Jang fire greets the master. Tyan Shan waved dismissively. No need for formalities. Do you want me to send you on your way, or will you go by yourself? Hearing Tyan Shan's words, Jang Fire's face showed reluctance. Tyan Shan's expression darkened, and a cold aura radiated from him. Jang Fire, sensing this chill, looked fearful. I quickly intervened. Tyan Shan, don't be like this. Tyan Shan looked at me coldly. Do you know what she wants to say? She wants to stay in the living world. Hearing this, Jang Fire started to cry, looking at me with pleading eyes. My father died 3 years ago. My mother is already so pitiful. If she knew her only daughter was also dead, she wouldn't be able to bear it. Please, I just want to stay with my mom for a month. Tyan Shan gave a cold snort. The ways of humans and ghosts are separate. Humans have their path. Ghosts have theirs. You know this better than anyone. If you insist on staying in the living world, I'll have to do what I must. With that, he pulled out a yellow talisman, looking ready to dispatch Jang Fire. I was startled, quickly grabbing his arm. If you insist on staying in the living world, then I must do what the Daoist way demands. With that, Tyan Shan pulled out a yellow talisman, looking as if he was about to exterminate Jang Fire. I was startled, quickly grabbing his arm. Tyan Shan, don't be like this. What harm is there in letting her stay for a month? She'll go when the time comes, won't she? Tyan Shan glared at me. What do you know? Do you understand how dangerous a ghost can be? But she could turn around and kill someone, sucking their yang energy. I've seen this happen too many times. Hearing this, I shook my head. That's too extreme. There are good and bad people. There can be good ghosts too. Tyan Shan's face remained cold. I'll tell you plainly. Any ghost who wants to stay in the living world, I destroy them all. We've already done enough by finding her body. Now she wants to push her luck and stay here. Isn't that just greed? I sighed. She just wants to see her mother again. How is that greed? Jang Fire still has a mother to see. But what about me? Seeing my mournful look, Tyan Shan's expression softened slightly. Zhao Ocean, don't be so compassionate to everything. It's dangerous, and it can harm many. I looked at Tyan Shan earnestly. Even if it's me, please let me be compassionate just this once. Hearing my plea, Tyan Shan's face was conflicted. He gave a cold glance at the weeping Jang Fire. You better remember what you just said, or I'll make sure you don't exist. Jang Fire, hearing this, burst into tears of joy, kneeling down immediately. Thank you, Master. Thank you, Master. I breathed a sigh of relief, approaching Jang Fire. Then looking at the body on the ground, I asked Tyan Shan, what do we do with the body now? Tyan Shan looked at me in frustration. With all that compassion, why don't you take it home? After a few seconds of silence, he said resignedly, her body is free now, but the best thing is to call the police. Let the authorities handle this. A death isn't something to take lightly, but if the police come, they'll quickly find Jang Fire's records. Then they'll go to her home. Jang Fire's mother won't be able to handle that blow, I said with concern. Saying this, Jang Fire looked at Tyan Shan with a pleading gaze. Tyan Shan glared at me fiercely. All right, I'll be a good person for once. After saying this, he pulled out a small black bottle, then calmly looked at Jang Fire. Jang Fire glanced at her own body, then nodded. Tyan Shan opened the bottle and dropped a white liquid onto Jang Fire's face. The liquid landed on her forehead, instantly turning into a cloud of white smoke. But the next second, her face seemed as if it had been splashed with acid, rotting away in an instant. I felt speechless inside. Now, even if the police came. Seeing this, I weakly asked Tyan Shan, do you think the police will charge us with defiling a corpse? Tyan Shan listened, giving me a look. Don't worry, brother. This method is quite common. We'll give the police a general rundown. Specialists will handle these matters. I smiled at him. You wouldn't be talking about the department, would you? Tyan Shan nodded. Exactly. Some things are beyond the police's scope. They naturally need us to handle. He paused, then quickly corrected himself. They naturally need the paranormal investigation team. I looked at Tyan Shan curiously. He almost seemed to slip up. Could he be part of the paranormal investigation team? Tyan Shan shook his head and said with a smile, I'll call the police now. Then he walked off to the side. It seemed Tyan Shan really had gone through a lot these past 3 years. Looking at the Tyan Shan who was so different from 3 years ago, I smiled. He still seemed playful on the surface, but his heart had grown much stronger. Jang Fire watched as Tyan Shan stepped aside, then softly said to me, Thank you, Master. 4 simple words, but filled with gratitude. Don't call me Master. My name is Li Tian. If you don't mind, You can call me Brother Tyan. I then asked her some basic questions. Where is your home, Jang Fire? How old is your mother? These sorts of things. But as I was speaking, Tyan Shan, who was on the phone, suddenly ran over in alarm. I forgot something. Today's the day the ghost marshals come to the human world to capture wandering spirits. If she's spotted, she'll definitely be dragged to the underworld. My heart skipped a beat, instinctively scanning our surroundings. What do we do now? No sooner had I spoken than a chilling wind began to blow around us, making me shiver uncontrollably. Tyan Shan's face went pale in an instant, looking at Jang Fire with urgency. Quickly, possess this rooster. Don't come out no matter what. Jang Fire nodded, instantly turning into a wisp of smoke and entering the rooster. The rooster, which had been dead, suddenly sprang to life and walked behind me. I looked at Tyan Shan in front of me. I asked Tyan Shan, what do we do now? Tyan Shan, without looking back, said 2 words, play dumb. I was about to continue speaking, but I saw Tyan Shan start talking to himself, wearing a face of forced cheerfulness, as if he'd met his boss, completely losing the calm he had moments before. Seeing this, I quickly lowered my head, not daring to look. A few seconds later, Tyan Shan suddenly stopped speaking, just when I thought the ghost marshal had left. The rooster behind me began to chirp and chatter fearfully. I could feel the terror in its voice. I lifted my stiff head towards where Tyan Shan was looking, not sure if it was an illusion or what, but I felt like there were eyes in the air, staring intently at me, making me break out in a cold sweat. I wanted to run away, but I saw Tyan Shan signaling me to stay calm. This eerie feeling lasted about 10 seconds. Then a cold wind gently passed by me, nearly collapsing me to the ground. There was a moment when I felt my soul might be snatched away at any second. Then Tyan Shan approached, looking scared, saying, come out. No need to hide anymore. The ghost marshal's gone. Hearing this, Jang Fire reformed her body, her face wet with tears from fear. She was truly terrified. I'm afraid the ghost marshal might come back, I said, pulling Tyan Shan. Let's get back, quick. Tyan Shan, with a cryptic tone, said, you think the ghost marshal didn't notice Jang Fire? I stopped in my tracks, looking at him in confusion. First, I've dealt with this ghost marshal before. He's very strict, but he's not without compassion. Then suddenly gave me a strange look. Tyan Shan, don't scare me. That look in his eyes scared me. The ghost marshal said he wanted to owe you a favor, but he doesn't even know you. Tyan Shan looked at me equally puzzled. Why would he want to owe you a favor? Tyan Shan looked at me with evident confusion.